This was supposed to be an easy project, something that I could knock out in a weekend. All I wanted to do was upgrade to the inverted electronics mod, replace some of my printer skirts, and then replace my Z-axis parts with polycarbonate ones courtesy of Tiger 3D printing. Instead, I spent about 20 hours scope creeping myself into oblivion, and honestly, I'm glad I did. The inverted electronics mod is popular for good reason. Rather than keeping all of your electronics hanging off of DIN rails under the printer, you flip everything 180 degrees so that they're facing up instead. Then, with some modded Z motor mounts, you're able to access the electronics by simply removing the deck panel. Let's get started by removing the deck panel and the electronics. So I think the best approach here is, now that the printer is on its side, basically unscrew the motors here and then essentially just thread out the lead screws, leave the bed here on the rails, and then from there, once the motors are actually out, should be able to just take off these pieces and then pop the panel out. Once these pieces are out, we're then going to be able to replace them with these ones, which I printed in carbon fiber ASA. These turned out really nice. These are different from the stock ones. They look a little bit smaller, and that's because they are sized for the inverted electronics mod. So you can't use these same pieces with the mod, unfortunately. In my case, it's fine. These are ABS Plus. I really should have replaced them ages ago. I'm actually, just tomorrow, I'm getting some PCCF parts from Tiger. However, I don't know if I'm getting the original or the inverted electronics parts. Okay, so fingers crossed it'll stay this way, but so far things have been going pretty smoothly. All of the old motor mounts and the lead screws themselves are out. I was actually quite surprised. There's so much just stuff. Like, I'm finding like old zip ties, bits of filament, stuff like that all over the place in the frame. So I might actually go and have a vacuum and basically suck all that stuff out. I have some of this, I don't know what it's called actually. It's just this like little rubber seal that goes in the slots. I might put that all on the unused slots, especially on the bottom here, so that gunk can't get caught in there and just sort of stays on top instead. I don't know exactly how much I have left, but I think I have enough to do the whole thing. And it's a little thing, but it'll make things look a little bit nicer and easier to clean in the future. Obviously, the wiring is still there, not dealt with yet. I'm gonna go basically disconnect everything, swap everything over. I have to put the feet back on now because the printer is gonna go back up. But before I do that, I really want to get these new Z-axis mounts installed. Originally, I was never super concerned with this mod, as I had the printer just sitting on my desk and it was easy enough to flip it over if I needed to change anything. Now, all of my machines are on shelves and I don't have space to flip them, hence the need for this upgrade. I also figured this would be a good excuse to finish installing skirts. Because I was lazy and I only printed skirts for the sides of the machine that you can actually see, the back and left side are a little bit naked at the moment. Got another little progress update for you guys. So as you can see, everything here, most of everything here is on, and I have the panel sitting on top, sort of like how it's going to actually be. Of course, this will be the bottom, but you know how it is. I've had this for just about 2.5 years and still never bothered to actually peel off the sticker on it. Rollo had this even longer before I did, so this thing is easily going on like 3 years of not ever being unpackaged. But finally we can actually use it. One thing I noticed, which I think is just me being dumb, but I somehow forgot that this skirt piece like exists. I don't have it anywhere in all my pile of parts here. I think I just completely forgot it. At least the sides are good, it being in the very rear, like you'll never see it when it's on the shelf or anything, but it does kind of irk me that it's not there. See if I can get a better pull than the last video. Clean. I think I deserve some sort of an award for jankiest panel securement clips. Basically, I thought these used the stock VORON clips, like these guys. Obviously not here. These guys. Turns out they don't. So I was gonna print the proper ones out of like PLA or something, but I have these right now. They were just sitting in one of the boxes, so I think I'm gonna run with these. They're held down. I don't know, mine's not a very good fit. Like there's quite a bit of a gap between the feet and there, but maybe my feet are just a little bit smaller than stock or something like that. The panel is held in pretty well. Obviously not as well in this corner because there should be a skirt piece here that it's bolted to. Alas, I forgot, so we'll run with this for now. It's sturdy enough, like it's not going to fall out or anything, but what can you do? Janky panel mounting aside, I was now ready to start placing components on the rails. The plan wasn't to actually wire everything up, but just to get everything in the right place. I used good old-fashioned VHB tape to secure the cable channels to the panel. I only ended up using a couple of them. I'm really not sure why I printed so many, to be honest. Alright, next up it's time to install the new Z parts from Tiger. And while the printer is already being worked on, I might as well reinstall the whole gantry too. The new Z parts went on without a problem, as easy as popping off the old ones and then replacing them. I'm very glad that I did print my own motor mounts, as the ones that Tiger gave me were for the stock machine. If I didn't print these ASA ones, I would have been completely out of luck, which is not a good place to be when your main printer is out of commission. I'm using this PCB I bought from Unscientifically on Discord. You can see right there. These are really nice. Essentially, it's just a fan splitter PCB. These ones are extra cool though because you can either have two inputs, each of which have two outputs, so a total of two inputs, four outputs, or you can have one input, five outputs. So it's really nice for something like bed fans where generally you'd have four of them. You could fit more on a bigger machine, but on a 254 is definitely the limit. And you can just basically screw this directly onto the extrusion and then run all the wires like that. So it makes my life easy. You can get these PCBs from other places. For me, I checked West 3D and the shipping was absolutely atrocious to Canada. It was ridiculous. So after seeing that, that's why I decided to go with Unscientifically instead, and I can say I'm not disappointed. These look really nice. For those who aren't aware, the point of bed fans is to help circulate air throughout your printer's chamber. This helps ensure that the temperature of the air in the chamber is more consistent, and also the airflow helps your chamber get up to temp much quicker than without them. I'm planning on making a dedicated video about increasing your chamber temps, but that's going to be a while away. To actually mount the fans, I'm using these files from GitHub. I thought I had 4 of them printed in ASA, but I could only find 3, so one of the mounts is printed in ABS Plus instead. Hopefully it doesn't melt. If it does, oh well. From there, Unsized PCB mounts directly to the bed extrusions, and all the fans just plug in from there. I like to put all the wires through a zip tie to make it a little bit more clean, but emphasis on the word little. Okay, let's talk about the gantry now. I had a few things in mind when I took everything apart. Firstly, I want to install my double shear mod on the motor mounts, and secondly, I want to flip the Y rails on top of the Y extrusions rather than the bottom. I also took a minute to replace any ABS Plus parts still in the chamber with more carbon fiber ASA. Actually, while I'm already replacing parts, I might as well just remove all the rails, then clean them and re-lube them. Doesn't that sound like fun? Alright, we'll make this one quick. I soaked the old rails in an ISO bath to get all of the old EP2 out, and then I replaced it with some grease that I bought from Person with Hat on Discord. I don't know the first thing about grease, but I've been told that this is the stuff that you want when your chamber temp is inching towards 80 degrees. At that temperature, EP2 becomes very runny and doesn't do a great job. Welcome back. This is, I actually don't remember, I think morning 3? So I feel like a Minecraft YouTuber saying this, but I did a little bit of work off camera, as you can see. So first and foremost, I installed the new Z-axis parts. Those went on without a hitch. I also took off all of the linear rails, cleaned them, got all the old grease out, and then put in some new grease. This was stuff that I bought from Person with Hat on Discord. It's quite different from what I'm used to, which is just like the EP2. It feels a lot thicker. So it's still very smooth, but there's quite a bit of resistance. But I think that's just because currently I'm moving the rails at room temp, and this stuff is designed to work in a much higher temperature. So yeah, I think that's the only issue. It just felt weird. I don't know how else to explain it. It's very smooth, but it's just, there's a lot of resistance that I wasn't expecting. But I think as soon as I get panels on and get the chamber up to temp, this should be just fine. You might not be aware of what double shear is, so let me quickly explain. Properly tensioned belts can easily bend your stepper motor shafts if there's no extra support for the shaft. Unfortunately, most printer designs, like VORON's, do not have any sort of support in place for the shafts. As a result, you need to run extremely low belt tensions. VORON docks call for about 1/4 to 1/3 of the spec belt tension for 6mm GT2 belts, and if you have GT3 belts, you could be running less than 10% of the proper belt tension to protect the motors. The solution is quite simple. Just make sure that you have a bearing on the end of your stepper motor shaft to stop it from bending. Since I'm using these double T plates, I just made a quick mod to the tensioner blocks to include support for a bearing. Now, the motor shaft always has support, and the whole assembly can move back and forth for tensioning, just like stock. In my opinion, this was the best way to do it on my setup, but any setup that is tensioning by moving the motors, like this one, is not really ideal. Oh yeah, I also flipped those Y rails too. So I just sent Stacking a picture of the gantry, basically just trying to show off, and he commented that I really ought to have some sort of shim between the F69 bearings here. The reason for that is that 6mm belts are actually spec'd as, I believe, 6mm plus minus 10%. So they could actually be wider than this gap, which is exactly 6mm here. So it's good to have that extra spacer in there. You don't need a lot, only like 0.5 millimeter, to make sure that your belt is actually properly riding between the bearings rather than sort of riding on the flanges. And naturally, I didn't do that anywhere. So I'm gonna go tear all this apart, put in those shims, put it all back together, and I'll see you guys when that's done. And you know, while everything is already apart, it'd be smart to replace the tool head too. Installing the Zoll carriage was a breeze, just follow the docks and you're set, basically. Running the belts, on the other hand, was a little bit more work. Something you'll definitely want to be aware of if you are running my mod is that they do make running the belts a huge pain. So on the stock setup, the tensioners look like this, and as you can see, there's a nice big gap in the middle, which is right here, and that gives you plenty of space to stick your fingers in, stick an Allen key in, whatever, to sort of help you route the belt around that pulley and then back out. However, you know, that's not a thing on my design. So I admit this was a really finicky process, but I will share some techniques that I used. First and foremost, when actually running the belts for the first time, I tensioned the motor mounts all the way, so that's pulling them all the way into the center. And that way, this gap between the idlers and the actual tensioner body was quite a bit bigger, and that would give you a lot more space, a lot more room to work with. The other thing is, all the complexity in terms of routing is all at the motor mounts, right? Because that's where you have to do the complicated loop around and then back out. What I would do is I would route one belt through the motor mount and then leave it, just have it hanging out the back, and then do the same thing with the other belt on the other side, and then finally do the front idlers and stuff last, which is a very kind of odd way to do it, but it makes it way harder to route the belt around if you have another belt already going through. So I'd leave them both empty, get the hard part out of the way first, and then finish up with the easier stuff. One other thing I'm a little bit weary of is essentially just the distance I have on the tensioner. So as you can see, it's not all the way loose right now, but if I go any looser, then this screw actually will just disconnect from the actual tensioner block, and that's no good for anyone. So this is essentially as loose as I can have it with that screw still connected. And because my max tension is so much higher on this setup, I gotta be careful and make sure I pre-tension the belts pretty well. So this is sort of where I'm at now. I have no idea what that is in terms of hertz per 150 millimeter, pounds, whatever, but that's sort of where our starting point is gonna be. And hopefully that's enough to let us go up to the full 6 to 8 pounds spec tension once I actually engage the tensioners there. With the belts and carriage installed, all that was left was installing the rest of the tool head, running the wires back to the board, cleaning everything up, and getting the printer running again. At this point, I was on day 6 of what was supposed to be a 2-day project, but I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. Bit of an update for everyone here. As you can see, I'm making some progress. It's gone relatively slowly, but that's okay. It's gone decently. Just fix that there. Okay, so as you can see, the way I've sort of approached this is I've just gone wire by wire and just basically seen how much length I need to get it to the board, and then basically cut it down or lengthen it accordingly. The one exception was the hot end wires. Those were not long enough, so I actually just added these Wagos here at the front, and then I just have separate cables that take it all the way to the screw terminals. I like that. I can quickly release it if I need to, but also I don't need to like sort of jankily solder these heater wires together, which I didn't really want to do. I'm not aiming for perfection here either. I just want it to be better than last time, and this is already a huge improvement, so it goes well. This part here is still ABS Plus. I just forgot to reprint it, but hopefully it's fine. This is really nice. It's gonna stop this guy from rubbing on the top, especially because I have the top hat on here. There's actually quite a bit of clearance for the cable, which is really nice. Here you can see we have for the A drive, we have our cable routed actually quite nicely there. It falls just behind the end stop, so it shouldn't get in the way. And obviously, because the motor's on top, the cables have to come down that way. Same deal over here. We have the Z umbilical, which I should probably rewrap because it doesn't look very nice. And then we also have the main B motor here, which just goes right the way down. Inside here looks okay. I still have to finish putting on the covers, but it looks okay. Obviously a big mess of cables that all come in, but there's not much I can really do about that. I'm gonna make sure they're zip tied out of the way so they don't get stuck in the fans. But beyond that, as long as they're organized, you know, they're out of the way, not gonna interfere, then I'm fine with it. And yeah, I think we can finally bring this project to a close. Well, there you have it, folks. I wanted to include a little bit more about tuning the printer, but since I spent so much extra time actually installing everything, I kind of ran out of time to do that. I might make a dedicated video on basic printer tuning if you guys would be interested, let me know. But yeah, that's all I have time for today. I gotta go get some sleep now, so I'll see you when I see ya. Bye!